We have an update to a story we covered almost 5 years ago. A 5-year-old was tragically shot and killed inside of his mother's South Carolina home. His mother's boyfriend, Rodney Pittman, was cleaning a gun and it went off and the bullet traveled through a wall and hit Calen. This happened in 2018. Since then, the child's father, Timothy Sherlock, who's from Olean, spent years healing and bettering himself.
He's releasing a book about moving forward and helping the community around him. Timothy joins us now to talk more. Tim, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So first, let's just talk about your road to healing since 2018. It's been almost 5 years now. What has that been like?
It's been a long journey. Spending time with my son, Carter, who I have custody of, and really exploring what Calen's life meant to me as a dad and what his life meant in his passing, and looking at the many gifts that both his life and death taught me.
So, Timothy, tell us what happened to your son. Kind of walk us back through what happened in 2018.
In 2018, my son had been living, both my sons, with my ex-wife in South Carolina. I had received a phone call that there had been an accident. I didn't get any details. I found out later on, as I was flying to South Carolina, that it had involved a gun and that he had been shot in the head while he had been sleeping, and that my older son was in foster care. I did find out later on through the investigation that Mr. Pittman had discharged the weapon that he was not supposed to have. He was on probation for menacing with a weapon prior. I did find out that my ex-wife at the time had known this and purchased the gun in the home.
Now, you have since, you've focused a lot of your work on gun safety, child protective services, parental rights. Tell us a little bit about the work you've been doing since then, working with lawmakers.
Well, since this happened, I ended up working with an attorney out of Syracuse by the name of Tina Bennett. She's a father's rights attorney, and getting involved with fathers who were fighting for their children, much as I had back then, and really looking at 50-50 custody and the impact of having both parents in the household. Also working with clients on dealing with removals of their children when CPS comes in. Working with that, I started advocating for common sense gun law. I'm not opposed to guns. I think guns do serve a purpose in our country, but it's looking at how those guns are sold and how they get into the hands of individuals. And then further working with lawmakers on passing legislation that would require parents during CPS investigations to understand their rights and understand what is and isn't allowed during that investigation to better protect their children.
Timothy, children are not supposed to go before their parents. That's not the natural order of things, of course, but unfortunately and sadly, it happens. We hear about this alongside with oftentimes those stories. Children and Family Services and these agencies that are trying to help, but oftentimes people get bogged up in them. It sounds like that is a big part of your story, and part of the message that you're trying to get across and get through to people is how to navigate that system. What advice can you offer for people? Because we hear those frustrations almost on a daily basis.
My advice is you are your child's biggest advocate. Always stand beside them. Always believe what they're saying. And furthermore, always consult attorneys, always consult and ask questions. You have the right to know what's going on. You have the right to protect your child above all else. So when you're dealing with these systems, you have to ask as many questions as you can. No parent should outlive their child, ever, in this country. We have words for widows and widowers and orphans, but we don't have words for the parent who loses the child. So if you're faced with a grief like this, or you're faced with dealing with these different agencies, I always say, make sure you're asking questions and make sure you're reaching out to attorneys and people who understand the system to advocate for you and stand beside you, because you're not alone.
Timothy, I want to ask you, your memoir was published yesterday, out to the public now, and you talk a lot about discovering humanity. And throughout your journey, you had a lot of focus on forgiveness. I want to ask you, what do you think your son would think of the man you are today?
Without getting emotional, I would like to think that my son would be proud of me. Finding forgiveness is not about the people who have inflicted harm upon us, but it's about ourselves and learning to let go of what will weigh us down and find joy in life again. My son was nothing but pure joy and love. He was quick with a joke. He aspired to be a police officer himself. Many times I had to take a step back and look at my own life and realize that many of the choices I had made could have put me in a position of Mr. Pittman's or my ex-wife's, and that I am human, and humans make mistakes. And we cannot be defined by our mistakes. And these are lessons that I teach my older son now, that we cannot hold on to anger and we cannot hold on to grudges, but we have to find it within ourselves to do the next right thing. And I would hope that Calen would be proud of that.
Timothy, well said. We can find your book at the typical places, I would assume. Is that correct?
It's listed on Amazon.com and with NFB Publishing.
Excellent. Timothy Sherlock, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and certainly for providing some insight that so many people really desperately need.
Thank you.